Welcome back to New Persuasive Words. I'm Scott Jones.
And I'm Bill Bohr.
And Bill, I'm celebrating today. I'm joyous.
Tell me about that.
I love pardons. I love, and Federalist 72, which I guess scholars think was Hamiltonian, but this were all Publius, right? Was the author, was the pseudonymous name. Calls it the benign prerogative that the executive has broad powers. This is not partisan. I don't care. I love when Trump pardoned Manafort. I love it all. I love pardons. I think they're great. I love when Clinton pardoned his brother. I love them. Scooter Libby, whoever. Let's pardon everybody. And it's interesting. Like FDR, I forget the numbers on this. They're massive. Like people used to do a lot more pardoning, and then the media culture and the toxic political culture made it harder and harder. People scrutinize these pardons. The court, the Federal 72 and other sources make it clear the founders intended broad pardoning powers brought over from in the British tradition where the king had these kinds of powers. They wanted this vested in the executive branch. Supreme Court has said that the president has wide latitude, but borderline unlimited pardoning power, with the exception of impeachment. Cannot overturn impeachment. So this bill is a wonderful day when the pardon power is exercised. I love constitutional democracy. I live in the home of the Constitution Center. Bill, I love it.
Very good. It's a wonderful way to celebrate Advent 1.
Advent 1, Bill. The Constitution.
Yeah, it broke in last night, like special report. I always hate when those come on. That's, my earliest memories, of my mom. One of my earliest memories is my mother crying after JFK was shot. I wasn't just 3 years old. I can remember that. So I'm a little, anytime a news interruption happens, I'm always a little nervous, but not sure that merited interrupting the football show I was watching. But my wife disagreed. She thought it was interruption worthy. I did not, but there we go.
I wouldn't interrupt anything for Hunter personally.
Yeah.
Although the ladies, he's kind of a ladies man. I mean, he did okay with the ladies apparently. Hunter is this is I feel in general, and this is really not a partisan thing. I think that presidents do have a lot of discretion in this area, and I like public displays of mercy. I think that's fantastic. And I think any follower of the way of Jesus should love when people are forgiven and given second chances, third chances, fourth chances. So there we go. So there,
there we are.
Well, Bill, a couple things. Let's do some shameless plugs. People can hear your sermons. I'll put a link in the show notes. Resident Exile sermons, give and take. We can hear interviews. If you want to hear more of me, you probably need your head examined, but you can do that. And I'll put links there. And also, we have a Patreon page if you want to support. I'm still looking for work right now, so if anybody has any job opportunities, I'll do. I'm the world could be my oyster. I'll shuck it. I'll do whatever it takes. And but please become it. We do put some time, resources into the show. If you want to support the show, you can become a sponsor. And if you, for any commitment, monthly commitment, I'll give you Bill and I's phone number, and you can call us.
How about we start with yours, depending on the level.
Oh no one wants to talk to me, Bill. No one. My phone number would not be. Your phone number is the golden ticket. Your phone number is what people really, really want. Come on, let's be honest.
And by the way, I don't. Have you ever shucked? How many oysters have you ever shucked? That's
Bill. You don't even get me started on my knowledge of the oyster.
All right, very good.
Yeah, don't get me started. Well, you could, because it won't take very long to exhaust it. I know less about the oyster shucking than you did about Jordan Peterson previous to our last episode.
Oh my goodness. Then stay away from the stay away from oyster shucking if that's how little you know. No,
very limited knowledge.
I have a scar. We'll just say I have a scar. So I'm much more careful the way I do it now. So
Do you put what? How do you feel about oysters? We're coming off the Thanksgiving holiday, and I know you like to cook, you like to prepare food. Where are you with oysters in stuffing?
Oh, I love it. I love it.
All
No,
right.
I'm a big oyster fan. Yeah, I like all the different things you can do with stuffing. Yeah. So oysters. Matter of fact, I made some oyster stuffing prior to Thanksgiving because I knew there wasn't going to be any where I was. So that's what I did. Yeah. I'm a big fan.
Excellent. This is a beautiful thing, and you know, for a significant, you know, if you do like more than a minimum commitment on the Patreon, if you say like if you commit to $10 a month to support us, I'm gonna have Bill send you some oyster stuffing. You can do this, you know, with one of those, like they did this with cheesesteaks in Philly and stuff.
Yeah. You may want to put a time. I will mark eat by such and such.
Yes, we do this.
And we can't guarantee it'll be a refrigerator, so you'll eat them on your own at your own risk. Yeah.
Look, I would wait until RFK is supervising things to do any of these. Oh no, he's not FDA though, so that would be.
No.
And who's going to be the FDA head? Martha Stewart,
right? Well, I don't know. That's a good.
Newman is Postmaster General.
Newman is Postmaster General. Yeah.
By the way, Kash Patel is running the FBI. This is great. This is great. I love this. What about to run the FBI? That guy, Giuliani's guy, the cop. What's that guy's name?
Oh,
the cop that hung out. What about Mark Furman?
Oh, there we go.
We can get Mark Furman. How about Mark? Yeah, how about DEA? Mark Furman.
Who was the sheriff? Who was the sheriff? He pardoned the guy.
Opaya, a sheriff Opaya, the guy that made the prisoners wear pink jumpsuits.
Made his own prison.
Opaya.
Yeah. No, there are all kind of qualified people in the Trump orbit to destroy the FBI, which they don't do anything that keeps us safe or anything. So yeah, that'll be good. I don't know. You're not going to want to fly. You're not going to want to, take trains. I don't know. We may just have to have our own individual bunkers when this whole thing is done.
Yeah, that could be another thing. We could build bunkers. We could come. We spec out. We need to bring Doug Padgett with us for that. That man built his own stool. There's
a man who knows how to do something.
Yeah, that guy's useful. I mean, this is someone that you want around, folks. So, well, I mean, Bill, there you go.
I wonder, given where the country has gone, do you think Doug will put a machine gun nest on top of his
on the bus? I think so. This is
our little rocket launcher. Right?
Remember how they outfitted that one ambulance in the Purge? One Purge movie, the Founding Fathers Purge movie.
Yeah. There was a show I could barely remember. I think it was called The Rat Patrol when I was a kid, where it was the desert North African World War II, and they were on jeeps with machine guns on the back, jumping over dunes. So we're gonna have to. I don't know.
Can you imagine? Can you imagine if somebody shows Trump the Purge movies?
Oh, yeah, he'll think they're documentaries.
Yeah, I mean that would be. Look, I like the Purge. Statements. Look, I think people would say, I mean, look, we could do some purging. Look, I've said I'm going to purge. Drain the swamp, purge the swamp. I like a little purging. Like look, conservatives, your Second Amendment, you get to use your Second Amendment for the purge.
Yeah. I think, this is interesting. Yeah, what we are heading into or driving into if you're Doug Padgett.
Yeah, the buses. I've seen the bus. It's very attractive. Very nice looking bus.
Yeah.
Get on the bus. Maybe it'll come to Vermont.
On its way to Canada.
Right, exactly. Doug could pick you up. Yeah. It's just every day though.
It's a gift. It's a gift that keeps on giving, isn't it?
It's like the Jelly of the Month Club.
Yeah. Jelly of the Month Club.
Yeah, that's in Christmas Vacation. That's what Clark gets for his bonus. He thinks he's gonna get a bonus to make the pool, and he gets the Jelly of the Month Club subscription. And Eddie goes, That's the gift that keeps on giving all year round. So yeah, this will be 48 months of the gift keeps on giving.
Yeah, that's good.
Well, Bill, you sent me a little article
this
week from the New Republic, which I used to subscribe to at one point in my life.
I have never subscribed to it, but it came up in a feed, and I looked at it, and I thought it was interesting. Yeah.
Elle Hardy is the author. I know very little. She's a journalist and the author of Beyond Belief: How Pentecostal Christianity is Taking Over the World. And the article is called, the title is "The Cultural Christians Are Taking Over the Conservative Movement." Subtitle is "It's the Hot New Thing on the Right, Dressing Up in the Trappings of Christianity Without Being Burdened by all the fussy moral obligations of the faith."
I love the subtitle. Yeah. Well, it's pretty remarkable. I mean, I did not check her Pew study percentages, but that there are Muslims, Jews, and Hindus that identify as evangelicals.
Born again evangelicals. Jews.
But it's easy to be a born again Hindu. You're born again and again and again.
And again and again.
Oh, we forgot. That reminds me, that bad joke reminds me of our new new contest. So
yeah, we have a new contest. I forgot to announce that I interviewed Todd McGowan for Give and Take today, the Give and Take podcast. And he has this great book called Embracing Alienation. And in it, he has a Descartes joke. You see that Descartes at the bar, and he's knocking back a few, and the bartender says to him, "Do you want another drink?" And he says, "I think not," and he disappears.
So the new feature is our first installment of Philosopher Dad Jokes. So Scott and I will work on them. But
yes, if you come up with one, we'll shout you out. We'll attribute you
to us. And we will certainly give you credit on air for Philosopher Dad Jokes. And I think
Dad Jokes.
Descartes is where to start. So that's wonderful.
Descartes is where to start.
So
yeah. Anyway. So this is back to cultural Christianity here. So this is you do have Muslims and Jews now. Not surprisingly. This happens more on the right than on the left, although there are Democrat Muslims who identify as born again Christians.
Yeah,
this is I don't know what's going on.
Well, I have a couple of thoughts. Yeah, and one of those thoughts is that any of us, those of us who have pastored in smaller communities, are the church, the prominent church that people drive by all the time, or I had a guy call me who had fallen into some hard times, and he called this church because he came here as a kid with his grandmother to church. So on one level, there are people have always kind of identified with whatever seemed to be prominent in their community or in their imagination or their upbringing. I always used to say that, I had maybe, 1,100, 1,200 members at Media Presbyterian Church, but if a meteorite hit Media, I would have had at least 6,000 funerals to do, because a lot of people said that's my church. And, all of us we get a call, and those of us are pastor, and they said they're a member of your church, and we have no record of them, right? They're going to have their funeral there because they were a member of this church, but in their minds, they identified it. And I think that was certainly called the cultural Christianity of the 50s and 60s, right? Was you identify whatever you saw as part of your community. So it makes sense to me that, I drive by that mega church. I went to it one time for their Christmas extravaganza that had live camels for the nativity scene.
I love that.
And so, those guys are evangelical or whatever. And my grandfather, who didn't have much good to say about anything religious will sometimes listen to Jerry Falwell. Now, this is pre-political Jerry Falwell, but he would listen to him because he was on TV, and would probably not have liked him if he knew him, but he identified with him because he listened to him, and so that part makes sense. I mean, these folks have been on TV and on the airwaves, and so I have probably lots of friends I went to high school with that live in a very conservative area that identify as conservative Christians, and who go to church rarely. So I think that's kind of
do they go to church more or less than the born again evangelical Muslims?
I would say they probably go to church a little bit more than the born again Muslim. But I told you, I think I've told that story before too. I pastored a community where there was because during World War II, people could get out of the internment camps, Japanese Americans, if they came and worked in the fields of southern Jersey for CF Seabrook. And so there was 25% of my congregation were Japanese American. Many of them had come as children and had stayed, right? And one of their friends needed to do a funeral, and they were associated with the Buddhist temple, but the Buddhist priest at that point was an ex-Catholic woman who had been a Methodist minister and became a Buddhist priest, and the Japanese folks were not very comfortable with her. So the woman asked me to come and do her husband's funeral, and we're talking through a translator, and I just said, well, I'm a Christian. And she looked at me, she goes, ah, yes, me, I'm a Buddhist Christian. So that was kind of her. She identified with that little stone church there in the middle of South Jersey that had been a refuge actually for many folks who had their lives disrupted. So I think that kind of stuff happens. There's a kind of naturalness to it. I don't know if that's maybe the evangelical thing's new, but the cultural, kind of drifting towards, the identify. If I'm a Sikh or a Hindu, it might be, and I'm living in I don't know, middle of Tennessee, it might be in my best interest to be an evangelical Hindu.
Well, she mentions Richard Dawkins, who has been one of the most antagonistic critics of Christianity, and now he's identified as a cultural Christian. Elon Musk, who is, as we said in a previous episode, self-identified as a vampiric alien, time-traveling alien. He has said that he, is very sympathetic to Christianity. He's a big believer in its principles. Aaron Rodgers has said that we need Jesus. It's a good time for him to come back because we're screwed right now.
All right, so let's just review our list of cultural conservative Christians there, people who we want to emulate. Elon Musk, Aaron Rodgers. Who else did you mention earlier there? Oh, Dawkins.
I'd like to be a time traveling vampiric alien. That's very cool. I think that's very cool.
Evangelicals are doing very well in the time traveling alien demographic right now, so that's good.
She mentions an interesting book that she says basically the Bible for the cultural Christians, which is actually quite a good book. And I like the author, Tom Holland's book, Dominion, The Making of the Western Mind. They often quote it with how that Holland argues, and she notes, with solid historical foundations, that the tenets of Western liberalism, from human rights to secularity, are deeply rooted in Christian thought and assumptions. Following the election, Democratic Party consultant David Axelrod spoke to Holland's thesis from another angle, arguing that the party has become a metropolitan, college-educated party which approaches the working class in the spirit of a missionary, that we're here to help you become more like us. Probably not a great strategy for the Democratic Party. This is great. She quotes Richard Dawkins saying, noting that he loves listening to the lovely bells of Winchester, one of our great medieval cathedrals, which he claimed in a 2018 tweet was much nicer than the aggressive sounding of Allah Akbar. It's not hard to imagine a Dawkins or Musk feeling as alien in an exuberant West African deliverance ministry as they would in a mosque. Well, I mean, Musk thinks he is an alien. So, so yeah, I mean, it's a quite good article. I'll put it in the show notes. It's not long. And I sent you something. This is from 2022 at the Pew Research Center, research on views of the U.S. as a Christian nation and opinions about Christian nationalism. The Pew Research Center, the gold standard of this kind of polling and research. So, Bill, 60% of the folks, all U.S. adults, think that the founders intended for the U.S. to be a Christian nation. 37% say no, 60% say yes. 33% think the U.S. now is a Christian nation, as opposed to 64% that think it isn't. And 45% of Americans think the U.S. should be a Christian nation, as opposed to 51% that do not. And just to get a little more specific and drill down, 8 in 10 white evangelical Protestants say the country's founders intended it to be a Christian nation, making them the Christian group most heavily inclined toward this view. Black Protestants at a rate of 57% and Hispanic Catholics 54% are the least likely Christians to hold this view, though half or more in both of these groups also say that the founders intended the U.S. to be a Christian nation. So you've got a pretty major swath. When we talk about Christian nationalism, right. I mean, there is a kind of extreme form of this movement that I think gives people the willies. But all the people that think America had Christian roots and think that America should return to those or be guided by those in some sense, that's not all extremists. This is a lot of people out there.
Yeah, I think it's an identity thing, right? You know, there's a sense, and again, it makes sense that in this kind of tribal moment, a postmodern moment, that you know you need to come up with some identifiers for your tribe. You know, I was in Northern Ireland right after the Good Friday Peace Accord was signed. I was there with a peace group of mostly Presbyterians, sponsored by the Presbyterian Church of Ireland, and I was there, and they told this story. I think it was a Catholic priest that told this story. We were meeting, and the story is during one of the marches, during one of the times of heightened tension, there were a group of Catholic school children had to pass through a Protestant neighborhood. I'm not sure why they had to do that, but these are young children, and they walk through and they start cursing and saying all kinds of horrific things, and the priest says to them, "Come on, these are children. You are Christians." And to the reply was, "We're not Christians. We're Protestants."
There you go.
And I think that's a little bit what's going on here. Now, again, I think the Christian influence and the heritage of America is a complicated thing. And, you know, just like we suffer from no longer teaching civics in our schools, it's obvious that the failure to teach American history has a profound impact as well, because you know, if you would have asked
Linda McMahon,
right,
is going to sort this out when she takes over the Department of Education.
Right, but I think, you know, it's for those people who say that America was totally a secular project, that, you know, that's certainly not true. But understanding kind of the nuances and really the complicated kind of coalitions that brought about separation of church and state, certainly the suspicions that Jefferson and Madison both had about a state church and the ill effects of all that. Even Washington.
I mean, Jefferson had suspicion of the state in general.
Jefferson, yeah. And even John Adams, who might be the most faithful churchgoer of the first four, his version of Congregationalism was strongly influenced by the Unitarian movement. Chauncey had a great influence on him. So, I think again that's part of the story. And to say, there were a lot of foot soldiers in the Revolutionary War who were there because they were, had inspiration from the first Great Awakening, and there were a lot of Presbyterians who were there because they were fighting for liberty and an opportunity to shoot British. Both things kind of walked hand in hand, and the kind of rhetoric that was being done from pulpits during the Revolutionary War was as much anti-Catholic, which doesn't make a lot of sense because England obviously was not a Catholic country, but there was a lot of kind of fake news back then that was religiously inspired. But I think that it's just a complicated. Our history is complicated, which makes it interesting. And so, any kind of reductionism, whether it be conservative Christianity or a full-blown secular agenda, neither of those are accurate in terms of from a historical perspective.
What about The Patriot with Mel Gibson? Remember, in the end, he asked if he can kiss the woman, and she says, "Sure, it's a free country." Just thought I'd throw that.
Yeah, the one thing it does that movie does get right, that basically it was a Civil War feud in South Carolina. I had a history professor in college who thought the way that the Revolutionary War was fought in South Carolina had a direct line to the fact that it was South Carolina that succeeded during the Civil War. So the violence and brutality, and the fact is that that it's not new that we fight each other, and that some neighbors who at one point probably went to the same church ended up on battlefields against each other.
I mean, that happens all the time in churches now.
Right. Well, what I'm saying.
This happens at Thanksgiving. So in this Pew study, here's just some interesting data points. Here's some interesting data points about Christian nationalism. Overall, 45% of Americans said they have heard at least a little about Christian nationalism, including 5% who have read or heard a great deal about it, 9% who have heard quite a bit, 17% who have heard some, and 14% who have heard a little. I always know how you go. No, I haven't heard some, but I've heard a little. I got you.
So what I heard you were accused of on a social media site the other day of not knowing.
I said I had blind spots about Christian nationalism, and I said, look, my buddy Bill and I talk about this incessantly, and we'll be talking. Look, you can say what you will about me, but don't. I think I know the subject matter because we talk about it all the time.
Do we make the 5% cut then?
yeah. We're the people that are. What about people that are tired of it? Where is that? Where is that? What about? Yeah, exactly. Non-Christians are more likely than Christians to be familiar with the term. That's fascinating. 55% to 40%, with atheists 78% and agnostics 63% being the most familiar. Democrats are more likely than Republicans to have heard or read about Christian nationalism, 55 to 37%, and younger adults are more likely than older Americans to have familiarity with the term.
Well, because those are the groups that are most nervous about this.
Right. So this is something that overall, and I find, I do find these data points true in my own experience anecdotally. That this is a conversation generally on the left, generally people outside, either in liberal, either they're not churchgoers, or they're in liberal churches, or they're left of center Jews, or that's where the conversation's happening. I don't often hear it bantered around in conservative circles. So that rings true to me.
Well, because I think a lot of conservative churches, July 4th is a more important holy day than Pentecost or Advent.
I think that's true. I think
So
Mother's Day is the biggest.
Well, Mother's Day is
Mother's Day is the biggest thing.
Mother's Day, right? Yeah, there's not why do we have a low Mariology but very high Mother's Day?
Very high, yeah, exactly. Mother's Day is the biggest day on the American Hallmark liturgical calendar.
But there's a sense. So right there in of itself is again, and growing up in an evangelical church, yeah, I mean, in some ways, you know, we were kind of late to the Christmas celebration. We did eventually, but there were a lot of Christian churches that saw an overemphasis of Christmas at church was like being Roman Catholic. I mean, I grew up in a very Protestant area, so there are some conservative churches that were kind of late. I think marketing, the power of the marketing of Christmas. I think even those folks are doing it now, but the fact that secular national holidays have become pregnant with religious meaning. I mean, I read a social media post that's saying we just had the most amazing Sunday. It was a Sunday after election, and we celebrate the election and Veterans Day. Praise be to Jesus. And there's something about even that phrase. I mean, it feels like, yeah, that's more than that's not quite what Jesus had in mind when he said render unto Caesar. That is more in line with bending the knee, right? And again, there's nothing. I certainly honor those who served our country, and having buried a lot of people who over my ministry, particularly World War II veterans, I have a deeper appreciation for Memorial Day, but but the national holidays in many churches are more important than marking the history of our redemption is a bit of a problem.
Jon Snow never bent the knee. Oh, he did bend the knee, actually.
He did bend the knee.
He did bend the knee. I forgot. He did bend the knee.
To his aunt girlfriend.
Aunt girlfriend. So no. Look, tell me he's not from West Virginia. So okay, a small share of the public, we're talking 2% here, including 9% of those with favorable views of Christian nationalism, describe. I don't understand that small share, 2%, including 9%. Okay, I don't know how that works out, but I'll put the link in the show notes for people to interpret the data points here. Describe Christian nationalism with reference to the idea that America was founded as a Christian nation and has always had a distinct Christian heritage. For some, this includes America being favored by God. One of the more detailed responses states, I guess this is an essay part of the study where people can, qualitative research sort of stuff. It is the belief that the American nation is and has always been defined by and identified with Christianity, and the government should take an active role to hold on to the truth. Instead, our elected leaders at all levels have bowed to cultural, societal change, removing Christian principles from our daily life. How's that working out? Gun violence is rampant. Total disregard for traditional families, by which the trickle-down effect is gender confusion, rampant mental illness, and fatherless homes where babies are taught to have more babies. Kick God out of school, and look what you get. The ills of this nation today lie almost entirely at the doorstep of the Liberal Democratic Party and Bill Bohr.
Not me, man. No bishop, no king. That's where I'm standing.
So this is this is an intriguing thing here. I generally think, I mean, look, on one level, I think it is helpful historically to appreciate the distinctive role Christianity has played in shaping some of the positive aspects of Western culture. At the same time, cultural Protestantism, Christianity gives me the willies. I think, I think that it often waters down the faith. I think it tends to make the faith, when Christianity becomes culture Christianity, it tends to be instrumentalized and then serve at the at the pleasure of other ideologies, which is just generally not a great or healthy thing.
No, absolutely. And there's plenty of historical, and we don't have to go that far in the past to see where that's happened. And again, one of the things, having grown up in an evangelical tradition, and then serving a mainline church, one of the again and again, the evangelicals and non-denominational folks pointed to how the mainline churches had acquiesced, their moral authority to the political left, and I think there certainly, I certainly think that was one dimension of the decline in mainline Christianity. And not to learn, this is not ancient history. This is recent history, and for that group of folks who I appreciate the things I learned. I appreciate learning the Bible. I appreciated learning how to pray, and the centrality of Christ. All those things. I'm so thankful for that heritage, and I just don't. And that heritage didn't go away. That shapes my faith today. I just feel I feel more of the tragedy of it than, again, I understand why people feel threatened by it, right? For me, it's like watching something that was always imperfect, but something that had done so much good in my life and the lives of others, to become totally bastardized. Yeah, it's a hard thing to watch, to see happen. And I think it's not the first movement that has been taken over by the culture. It won't be the last. But again, it's become a sad chapter, another sad chapter in that story in the history of Christianity.
But as Augustine says, the church is a whore, but she's still my mother.
Right.
So I mean, this is the imperfect, the imperfect nature of the fellowship is what we live with, right?
Right.
We live with.
Yes, and I think that's true, but I don't. But then, and I totally agree with that. And it's not that I'm speaking from a perspective of perfection at all. I mean, I'm my very flawed person. The trouble is the unforgivable sin. And there is one, because Jesus said there was one.
Eating the whole meal with the salad fork, if you're an Episcopalian.
Right. Is to call good evil and evil good. And I think there are a lot of Christians who have, if they haven't done already, are on the verge of praising an incredible evil thing.
Well, let's hope that in the face of such danger, that God is generous with the pardoning power. That's my hope. But
there we go. Amen.
I'm in need. I hope God is a generous judge, because I'm in need of generous judgment.
Well, I love we at a previous podcast say we might not be universalists, but we hope God is.
We hope God is. We hope God is. Thanks, everybody. This has been fun. And send us the dad jokes. Support us on Patreon, and follow other links to keep up with what we're doing.
Take care.
Take care.